Welcome everybody to a new episode of New Waylie, episode 7, where we start doubting what game we're actually playing here. So, let's cut to the chase.
Chase ink.
And now that that's done, I'll let you know what's going on. We are starting a huge project here. This is a stacked residential complex that's going to scale up this mountain. Maybe not all the way to the top, but pretty close is the plan. So it's going to be apartments, condos. We might find a way to squeeze in some actual standalone houses as well. But the main idea is apartments or condos. As usual, I've got a general idea of the things I want, but other than that, a lot of this is just going to be improvised. So the main aspects, the main things that we're going to go for here are an arrangement of apartments that roughly follows the slope of the mountain. Parks or other similar areas at some levels to break up the apartments but still continue this vertical stack. At least one dedicated public transportation entrance. And of course, increasingly futuristic stuff as we go upwards, particularly things for hover vehicles, maybe even air roads, things like that. So this will take quite a few episodes. I'll do my best to cut down the footage in a way that's interesting while still showing enough of the process. It's definitely a long journey, and there will be trials, difficulties, accidents and mishaps, or maybe a construction robot rebellion. Insane stress and moments of near madness that only meme music can soothe. You just wake up one day and you're like, what is this traffic? And you find out that literally everyone is using your house to U-turn. But we'll get there, and it's definitely a fun project that's been turning out pretty cool. So I hope the footage so far was pretty explanatory. The main asset I'm using here for the apartments is the modern Rowhouse. Well, actually, I should say Modern Houses 1 to 4 by Smileys. I'm pretty sure they were actually freshly released when I started looking at starting this area. So it was... so I was really excited to find them because they're very modern looking, but in a way that I think fits a futuristic city. You know, I thought it would fit really well in here, and so I placed them all in game first and decided which ones were going to be at what level, because the lowest level would be the lowest income housing, and then of course the higher we go, the nicer the houses should be. Then I converted them all to procedural objects because not only was I considering stretching them out and modifying the model a little bit, but they needed to be built into the cliff side, into the mountain side here. So we needed them to, you know, go ghost. So procedural objects was perfect for that. Now the thing we're working on right here is tiling this whole area. This was pretty tricky because, as you see, you know, I've made a V shape to fit the space that we have in the mountain here, in the mountainside. So the tiling can't just be, you know, a pure simple grid. It has to follow the V shape in some way. So I tried a couple things first, but I decided that the main thing that would work would be to have the tiles lined up with the houses themselves, which means that they are going to be in a V shape as well, at least in some respects. So we're going to have to modify a lot of these tiles so that they line up well. Now this is pretty difficult for two reasons. First of all, these are square decals, so there's only so much you can do with a square, you know, to make sure these things line up. But the biggest issue was that I simply was not very used to modifying decals with procedural objects at this time. And Acorus came up with a really great tutorial about decals that totally explains what I'm doing wrong here. But that did not come out for a good bit after I finished this whole area. So I don't think I even figure out the whole issue while I'm here, because I'm definitely confused why there are so many nodes. So it's only later that I find out through Acorus's video. Or I should say confirmed, because I did end up learning what's going on here just by experience. And what's going on is that a decal is actually well, I shouldn't say cube exactly, but it's a prism, right? It's for anyone who doesn't remember the geometry, right? A prism is just a cube that's not exactly a perfect cube. It's the general shape for a 3D quadrilateral, I guess you could say. So it's a kind of a cube shape, but it's not really... It's more like an effective range of the decal, something like that. So the actual decal is 2D, but the height of this quote-unquote cube defines how high of a slope it will work on. So for example, you see here I'm placing this curb, and the decals are actually showing up on the curb. That's because, again, there's enough thickness to that tells the decal that it should still work with anything within that height, and the curb is definitely within the height of that decal. I ended up leaving it this way, I'm pretty sure, probably because I didn't know what to do with it, but also because I liked the idea, actually. And I think it looked really cool to have this curb kind of be like just this elevation of tiles. And maybe for our current world it doesn't look totally realistic, but hey, for the future I think that's perfectly fine. You know, just these tiles and or blocks or bricks or whatever they are just kind of built that way, and the curb just fits perfectly on them. And I don't think it looks too bad anyway, even for our contemporary old primitive perspective. Now, I placed this curbside here because I realized this is a perfect place to put some green. We can have some grass or flowers or something. Not something I originally planned because, as you might have noticed in the previous clip, I already put a road under this whole area, which I kind of imagined as being parking. But I also thought that this part would also be for cars. I initially imagined this whole area as being just kind of like the outside lobby plaza sort of thing, and this is where buses would be. But I very quickly abandoned the idea because I thought having a kind of garden here would be a lot better. Now, this little corner was particularly difficult though because it is so small, and it's very hard to modify the planters to fit in there, because even if I modify the nodes to kind of squeeze it in there, I'm not really sure what happened. Maybe the curbside was just too thick or get distorted. Distortion would be my guess. Sometimes when you have angles that are too acute, the edges on those things will get thickened up. And I actually used that to my advantage in a later, on a higher part of this complex where it actually looks really cool. But in this case, it would not look good. So I kind of had to do it manually with the grass, ploppable grass surfaces and some separate curb pieces. Then just add some of these clusters and plants, and really this was just a little effort of trying to come up with a design that worked. Find which kind of bushes made sense along the edges, keep the thicker ones in the middle. Again, trying to figure out what could I possibly do with this really tiny edge. Finding a bush or flower or whatever that would stick out enough to cover the tip, but not so much to make that tip look awkwardly fat. So that was a bit of a problem. And apparently I just decided to give up, and I went to look at the previous parts of my city to refresh myself. Okay, probably not. To be honest, most likely a new viewer came by, or a previous viewer that hadn't seen a few things. I was giving them a little tour of the area. So I'll take this opportunity to freeze the frame at a few points so we can see the things I didn't get to show in the previous video. For example, here's a much better view of the garden at night, where we can more clearly see the blue and green lights I added between the trees and the garden. Also, at the back of the house, I added a door, which we can't see here, but we do see some hanging ivy, some solar panels, and even some rooftop windows that I believe are vanilla assets, but I figured they'd work pretty well here. Now here's something that I added, a sign of things to come. This bus here is a prop, but it does exist as a vehicle, and as you might be able to see or guess, it's actually a hover bus, exactly the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking to have in this city. So we put that there, and bus stop, which is a prop again. I'm not sure if I'll leave it there. I think even as of now it is. But the point is that this is the kind of stuff we'll be using. Hover buses, hover public transportation. Here we're back to the second house of the city. A better view of a planter with bushes up front, the elevator, and of course a ton of solar panels. And as well as the rough, untamed little front yard that I mentioned before. However, I really didn't like using the vanilla roof of this house, so this is where I decided I had to change the surface of it. So this is a pretty simple thing. I'll just breeze through this because it really was just figuring out which one of these surfaces I really liked, and I think I ended up with the asphalt of all things. Yeah, I think it was normally a road surface, but I thought it looked decent enough here, and that's what we went with. And the main issue was really just trying to figure out the best way to arrange the shapes that I needed to fit within the walls of this house. And that was it, because now you have no idea how many times that song comes to my head while streaming. Just so many times I'm just saying that we're gonna go back to this place, or we gotta drag it back, especially with things like move it, or yeah, just any time you have to move things out to check, right? It's often that I move something out and then bring it back to where it was. So I'm often saying something very similar to the lyrics of that song. So I might as well sing it, which I usually do on stream. At least, you know, that one part of the lyrics. So I struggled for a really long time to find a bush or flower that worked here, just something I can cram in that little corner. And I finally did. I found this one here, which if I carefully positioned it and even adjusted the height, I could get pointier side of the bush to point outwards and better fill up vertex as I wanted it. So that plus these red bushes I found that I used to line this whole area just really made this come together, and I knew that we were pretty much done. At some point though, I realized that we had this really awkward corner in the inside of this area because I had put these apartments in this V shape, but you know, there really wasn't a lot of space back here. We had two houses just coming together in that V, and I figured that wasn't actually going to be optimal. We need to have some more comfortable space for their entrances. So I angled one of them a little bit so that it lines up pretty much basically facing the house on the other side straight on. And that was enough. I just had to finish the tiles down there, which I'm not sure if I did right now. But what I really need to do, probably because I was at the end of this stream, is just to start adding the path on top so we can really start getting a sense of what this is going to look like. Even just for myself, it's nice to see the next level of construction, even though I'm not done yet with the lower levels. Which, as you see, I just deleted some, because if anyone was paying attention, you would have noticed that that lower level was not the same as the other side. I put the wrong houses down there. So luckily this is pretty simple, right? Because I already have them place, and it's just copy and paste over to the other side, and it's not really any issue with being able to align this or anything. It wasn't too bad to do. But now it was time to start modifying these models a little bit to really make them fit in our area. Now, one big thing was that, especially the second level of the houses wouldn't actually stretch all the way into the mountain. I decided that we should have some backyard here, kind of like a private little area. So we needed to find a way to stretch these models to give us the space that we wanted. So the first challenge was really just that, trying to find which nodes moved what, and I finally found the ones that just moved the floor and which ones moved the fence. However, before adjusting the fence, we needed to have the stairs perfectly in place, because I wanted a clean way for one to move between the backyard and the stairs here. I needed to know exactly what steps were going to be at the level of the deck here, and then adjust the fencing as we see here to an appropriate, comfortable opening. In fact, this same thing I realized had to be done with all the houses here, because there's no way that we could have the fence all the way to the end of the backyard if we want these people to be able to leave their backyard and get onto the stairs. I wanted this to be kind of a alternate access point, you know, and not just have to go to the front street, always have to go to the front of the house. But at the same time, I wanted the house with the most space, the one that would probably be the one for the highest income residents, to have a little bit more privacy in their backyard. So to do that, I thought about putting some stairs on the back so that all the other residents had a way to bypass this backyard. And this was pretty tricky, and I really wasn't sure if it was going to work. But not only did I think it was going to be really cool if I did, it would also give me an opportunity to do something else, which is what I'm leading to with these walls here. And that was having a place for individual houses, as I mentioned originally, that might be a possibility for here. Since the houses aren't stretching all the way back into the mountain, we have some free space, so to speak, where we could have some actual houses built into the mountain and kind of overhang these backyards. So I first needed to fix the area where these stairs meet by taking one of the stairs and I was turning it around to find a place where we had a flat surface to use that would be the intermediate level or landing, I guess is what you would call it, where these stairs meet. So first the frame there for a little bit so you could see exactly which house I was considering placing here. I believe it's an Australian house, and it was kind of funny that you can see I was looking at maybe placing this somewhere in between our two individual houses, standalone houses, because I did consider that some of those areas could have a row of houses as well. But it was only now that I came up with the idea that no, this should be over here overlooking the area we had before. As I already explained, it's just that at this point I hadn't really, I guess I wasn't completely sold in the idea, but now here I decided we'll definitely go with it. However, when I converted it to a PO, we lost a few things of this house. The roof was gone, and I'm not sure what else. So that was fine. It just means as long as most of the walls were there, right? Most of the exterior was there. That means that then it was just up to me to try to fix the rest of this. So make my own roof, hey, gives me the opportunity to detail the top of this house however I want. It was, however, pretty tricky to find out exactly how to modify some of these walls, because if you stretch things out the wrong way, you might expose an area that is only one-sided, you know? So like right now we're looking at this wall and that's perfectly solid, but if you look at it from the other side, oops, you see through it. So maybe the wall can't be brought up too high from wherever the bottom of the roof was, for example, because it doesn't have an inside surface. Eventually I decided this just really wasn't going to work for the exact shape I wanted, because I already came out with the idea that maybe I want the very top to be flat, and then I could have some sort of garden or just otherwise greenery up here. So I found these walls, which I actually am not really sure what they are anymore. These wood walls might be. But I figured I'd use those for the part that is closest to the mountainside here. And with this I can also create my flat surface by adding the grass. The ploppable grass, of course. And that would be the bottom of our little garden area. Now the question, of course, was, am I going to put bushes here or flowers, or how about even a tree? One big futuristic thing I've been doing through the streams of this city is to put trees at these elevated areas in places where you wouldn't normally think there's enough of a ground thickness for the roots of the tree. But hey, this is a future, things are built differently, and you know, you can, I'm sure the trees are genetically modified or whatever to have smaller roots or who knows what, but you can just put them anywhere, and that's what I'm doing here. So I plopped down a bunch of bushes and probably flower bushes as well, just to kind of have a variety and choose where they're gonna go, find the balance. And I also added this little curb. I think it's called a curb, you know, but it's really like a planter, curb planter or whatever. Just add a little something there, kind of like a vegetable garden. That was the idea, yeah, basically like a little vegetable garden. And that was basically it for that house, at least in terms of the house itself and the garden area. We still need to have a front to it and the path leading to it, which is why I was adding those walls right there. Now there's definitely a little bit of missing footage here, so we jumped ahead a little bit and we can see that the main thing I've done is just added the pedestrian path I was talking about between those two walls, and also drew it toward the left here beside the main stairs. I'm not quite sure why I did this. I don't really remember, because obviously right now I'm building the landing based on that. So I've completely forgotten if I really was going for some sort of double stair system, or maybe the left one was going to be a ramp. I don't know. But I should bring attention to that path, because if you pay attention, you can see that the right side does have steps, but it's using my pavement path. That's exactly, I think, what this thing is called. I think it's a pavement path, stairs, or something like that. And it uses your pavement texture, but it has steps to it. It's broken up. Now, I'm not sure how good it is, though, because it looks like the front of the steps are not textured at all. So it definitely has its limited uses, I guess. And the tops of each step are only perfectly level at certain, or maybe probably only a certain slope. So that also limits when you can use this. But I thought it worked really well here. Now the big issue I'm trying to deal with here is getting all these, this whole area worked out, because I have the main stairs and then the stairs coming from the patios of those houses, and then joining up to another set of stairs, right, that go up. So I'm pretty sure I'm using some sort, oh no, I remember what these are. These are actually benches. It's a concrete bench that I've stretched out a good bit, and that's why maybe if we get a different angle, you'll see they're not like a pure monolithic block. It's actually more like box with the front and back sides open. I thought it actually works really well. It at least makes this look a little more interesting when you look at it from the front. But it definitely took a lot of work to get this perfectly lined up with each other. I wanted all the steps, of course, to be even. So yeah, I spent a long time getting this all worked out, but I finally did. And oh, and the biggest issue though is what I'm doing right here is that I want a flat landing here, but that path has a railing to it. I was experimenting a lot here to decide what exactly I was going to do, because the way I'm doing it right now, as you see here, well, I have blocks on top of the path, so that means if I do have any pedestrians walking here, they're going to end up swimming in the concrete. I think I left it this way though, and I just decided that I'll have to work it out with an invisible pedestrian path and just have that at the correct level. Now, I'm speeding up the next part by a ton because, again, I have no idea what I was doing with this thing. You can see right now when it turns white, it's because it's the same stair pavement path. So when the untextured part is pointing one way, it looks more white like that. If it's pointing the other way, then you'll see the pavement texture as it is, yeah, right now. But I think pretty soon we'll see that I just end up removing this and settling for an invisible path over the stairs we already built. The first thing I do is lower the path on the right here, so that the top of the railing becomes flush with the floor of the concrete landing. And then I start messing with the other side, or just bringing it in, I guess, to make the invisible path. A lot of the weird experimentation you're seeing here is actually to get enough of a flat landing, because you see we're right against the mountainside there, so I need some space there, but the paths are deforming that terrain. There's a crazy amount of things here that need to be working together just right, fitting together just right. So we have the path here deforming terrain, but I don't want it to deform too much because I don't want it to look exactly as it looks right now. There's enough room for the landing, and then the back of it is just this slope of rock. However, I also have to deal with this, where because this is now connecting to an invisible path, the railing has to look right. It has to either curve or be straight in a way that makes sense. And then to make matters worse, whatever way that I adjust that path there affects how it looks back here, which is the path going to the two houses we placed earlier. That took a lot of tweaking. That'll speed up by like 12 times because I almost wanted to give up with just how annoying that was. Because not only was I having like texture glitches, but again, it's messing up the railing connection to the landing, and then you have the steps to deal with. Ugh. But this part's kind of interesting. I want to show that I came up with this idea to split the path and have it go under the planter that we had placed before. I just kind of imagined that would be kind of like some sort of delivery area. There is a small autonomous delivery vehicle on the workshop. So if I decide to put one to service this area, I could have its path go in there, and why not? I'm trying to show off futuristic concepts here, so I want to show that some houses have a dedicated entrance for robot deliveries. Now, if it wasn't clear what I was just doing, I was placing invisible paths all over the lower part of this complex. I figured we were close to being done, so it was time to get those in there, but I was having some trouble because I was getting some terrain deformation. And I was pretty sure that there was a path that didn't deform terrain, and I found it. So I wrote a comment right here on this assets page, telling the author that they should really put that in the description. That like they should really advertise it as a feature that their pedestrian path does not deform terrain, while most others do. Now we're back to the stairs because I realized that there was a big mistake in my design, and that was that I didn't have a landing for the stairs coming from the patios. So I had a bit more work to do, and again, that was, I wouldn't say tedious, it was kind of interesting, but you get the basic idea just from looking at this. So the main thing actually afterwards was just to add some sort of a railing here now. And again, not because it's necessary, but just because I thought it would be really cool. A way to add an accent to this area. So I used a concrete wall similar to the ones I had used, that we're seeing right here, below the stepped pedestrian path. And just modified it with procedural objects so we can get more of a triangle shape here. And that was basically it, what we're seeing here. Then it was just adjustments to get it to shape correctly. So from here on out, it's just completing this path and stair network, as well as detailing the two houses. So I'm using the retaining wall here. I figured it would be better to sort of replace the barriers on the path, and we can adjust its height as desired. So it's really pretty simple stuff here, but I'm going to leave the video, of course, so we can see exactly how I'm designing this. A little bit more effort, of course, was needed on this side because, again, I don't think I actually dealt much with the entrance to this patio right here. So not only did I need to put that barrier, but I also needed to sort of continue this triangle pattern here to really show where our entrance actually is. Now on the right there, we still have open terrain, apparently just rock. So I copied some of the walls that we had there already and placed them in here to cover that up. and also extended the network to add some curve here. Now this looked a little weird, but I thought it was a great design opportunity. It'd be a great place to have some sort of plants here. So I looked around for a few tiny bushes or flowers, but I thought that the best thing was actually going to be this hanging ivy. Just put this ivy all around here. First I'm placing them kind of randomly, and then I would arrange their heights so that they would be on the ledges. Now to cover up the terrain on this side, I use these retaining walls, and they kind of have this, I'm not really sure, it's like a cloth-like weave. It almost looks like bricks, but I think it's more like cloth or something. I'm not really sure, because I don't even know what these things are like in real life. I guess that is a kind of stone or something, I don't know. But enough to cover that up. And then it was time to deal with these houses. First I changed the type of path I was using here, because I was trying to find something a little fancy, a little more interesting. I ended up settling for this one, which I'm not really sure what it is now, because it has these really odd breaks, lines and stuff, which kind of looks like the stepped path I was talking about, but this is a different texture, so I'm actually a little confused right now. But whatever it is, I thought it looked good, and then it was time to detail the houses. So I added some stairs there and just started personalizing them. So I put one of these glowy lit pots that I've been wanting to use for a while and settled on a sunflower. I thought that would be perfect here. A little big, but so what, you know, you live there and you use when you want to use, you know, so whatever. This person will be a little bit more modest with their plantery. So I put some very small, I think they might even be vanilla, I'm not too sure. No, they're not. These little flower pots or whatever they are. Put a bike. Now I didn't want to have the path just awkwardly elevated like that, so I figured we should wall this up. But I quickly changed my mind about wrapping the path completely, and instead only add a wall right here, and the rounder part would be a cantilever. Instead I took the wall under the path, and this gave me an opportunity to have an extra little patio, backyard or side yard, I guess you would call it. It would follow the slope though, because I want something interesting here. So make that wall go all the way up to the roof there. So we're actually going to have a slope here, a sloped grass. And I thought that would be fine because, so I said backyard or whatever, but it really would be just a green area, right? So probably bushes or trees. And that's exactly what I ended up going with. I ended up going with some trees and some bushes, which you'll see. But this was a little tricky because I had to get a couple of these poppable grass surfaces and just arrange them in the right way and edit the nodes a little bit so that they were as flush with the terrain as possible, but still not obviously be, you know, broken or jaggedy or whatever, and it could still give us the slope that we wanted. And this came out perfect, exactly what I wanted. Just a really green, dense area right here. I even put some grass in there, tall grass. So it's grass and bushes, maybe ferns and trees. And that was it, and this area was done. The houses were done. Now the retaining walls made me realize I need to do something a little bit different with the fences. And the main thing I was doing was that the center post, like the first post closest to the house, I lined them all up. Like all the houses had that post in the same place. And only the outer one varies. So the way I imagined it is that the inner part of the fence is immovable, but that final post can be moved. So basically that whole part of the fence is maybe made of some stretchable metamaterial or something. So you decide where the fence ends. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea. It's one of those subtle things that you're not really going to notice or really know unless I tell you, right? But that's kind of the point, I think, of having these futuristic elements in the city, is that they're just there and you don't really know unless you like go literally touch those fences. You'd actually see that, wow, this is not a normal material. And that is going to do it for today. Those two little houses, or condo I guess, are done. So we're going to have a final look right here, fully detailed as well. Next time, we're going to be dealing with the next level of this apartment complex, which is definitely going to involve some of what we've already built right here. And we're going to do some modifications to the second house, you know, the one that we built before this apartment complex. So do tune in next time for the next videos, episode 2 of Houses Skylines. Or maybe this, yeah, it's gonna feel like Houses Skylines for a long time, I think. I don't know when we're actually gonna get a real city here. But you know what? Wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.